Well, good afternoon, friends, and welcome once again to another episode of Orange Weekly presented by Krause Health. We're live here on the Syracuse Orange football Facebook page. That's a mouthful. We're also live on the Syracuse Orange YouTube sports channel. And what we're doing is we're talking Syracuse football with you. We pop on here live on Thursdays here on these channels. And we talk sports. It's a simple thing, and it's a beautiful thing. And your participation, your comments, questions, and all things Syracuse football, welcome as we go along here. We'll highlight some of your questions and comments as we go. And just a reminder, if you missed the show live, it will certainly be on YouTube. We'll put up a post on syracuse.com. We'll fire it off our social media channels. So if you do miss the show Thursdays, right around noonish is when we're here live. Certainly the opportunity there to find it on replay. And just a reminder, most of you that watch this show also come hang out with us after the game on Saturday. But in case you don't know, I am live on these same channels after every Syracuse football game, doing a little post game. So this week we got a Friday Night Lights matchup. We'll be on well into the night Friday, maybe even into Saturday morning, depending how late the game goes. But same thing, if you missed the show live, it'll be on YouTube. You can find it on our social media channels. Easy to find a replay. I embed it in my recap on syracuse.com as well. Easy to find a recap easy to find a replay, pardon me, if you missed the show live. Well, the Orange are 3-0. And the last two times Syracuse started 3-0, they went in two dramatically different directions, friends. They started 3-0 in 2018 and finished that season 10-3 and went to the Camping World Bowl and had one of the best seasons in recent memory for Syracuse football. The time prior to that, they started 3-0 in 2015. Then they lost 8 straight, nearly lost 9 straight. It took last-second play for Syracuse to beat Boston College, and Syracuse hauls Scott Schaefer away on their shoulders, despite the fact that game was played with the knowledge that Scott Schaefer would be moving on. Let go prior to that game by then Syracuse athletic director Mark Coyle, who was here for about a cup of coffee. And then in steps John Wildhack and Dino Babers as the head coach, not particularly in that order because Mark hired Dino and then Wildhack came in. So what will this 3-0 record spawn? Will it be 4-0 against Virginia on Friday? And the last time Syracuse was 4-0 also in 2018. But this is a football team that has not been 5-0. Oh, boy, the coaches will hate that. We're not taking it one game at a time here. But look, guys, if they beat Virginia Friday, and I think they're going to, and I wonder what you guys think about this game, they're going to beat Wagner. I mean, Wagner is a level below Syracuse. Wagner, frankly, is terrible. They got beat by Rutgers, I think, 66-7, and they're just not a competitive football team at their level, let alone playing a big boy school in Syracuse. So barring the upset of all upsets, that's what beating Virginia means for Syracuse. It's not only 4-0, it's in all likelihood 5-0, and they head into their bye week. In that scenario, just needing a win to get to a bowl game. Everybody kind of agreed before the season started that the standard for Syracuse football this year, if they could get to 6-6, all things included, the tough schedule, a lot of good quarterbacks on the schedule, and everything we talked about before the season began, everybody would kind of be cool with that, right? And move ahead, and Dino would be off the hot seat, and here we go. And there's a lot of football to be played here, but having seen this team play so far, I think they're kind of edging more towards what a 2018 season could be like more than a 2015 season. But football's football. Weird stuff happens. You kind of have to watch as this goes. I hope you guys have recovered from the Purdue game, particularly the fourth quarter of that Purdue game. A wild game, one of the wildest quarters of football I've ever seen in the JMA Wireless Dome. Prior to that, of course, the Carrier Dome. And man, that's what football can bring you. That was a dreadful game for about 2.5, 3 quarters. And then, boy, did things pick up. The wild penalties at the end and so many things. And now on a short week, you turn around and look, the story of this game, folks, it's not hard to find it. It is the Robert and I, Jason Beck Bowl. Robert and I, offensive coordinator, Jason Beck, quarterback coach. They were at Virginia last year. You guys are well aware of this, but we're here. It's that week. It's that time. And they helped build Virginia's offense into a top 5 offense in the country last year. It should be noted, Virginia finished 6-6. You know, their defense had a tough run, even with that overwhelming offense they had. Brennan Armstrong was one of the best quarterbacks in college football last year. He's not quite on that level this year. Transition, new coach at Virginia, Tony Elliott, who came over from Clemson. We'll get into that a little bit here shortly. But Robert and I and Jason Beck provide an amazing tactical advantage for Syracuse in this football game. I mean, we've heard so much about the transfer portal and players coming and going in the transfer portal. To get two coaches to come in that have intimate knowledge of not only the quarterback, but several players on that Virginia offense, the offensive system. Think of the time spent, not just this week, guys, right? And Ben, I see your question here, so we'll hop in and answer that here shortly. And you guys hop in the comments and fire away here as we go. Think of not just this week, because it's a short week. I bet you that Tony White spent a lot of time in the offseason speaking with Robert and I and Jason Beck, getting tendencies for Brennan Armstrong. How does he do against the blitz? How does he do in this defensive situation? What are his strengths and weaknesses? To have that kind of intimate knowledge of your opposing quarterback is such a huge advantage. Now throw in the fact, I was just mentioning this a moment ago. It's kind of weird what Virginia's doing, and you expected a different philosophy, and you expected a different type of offense and a system and everything, but they've asked Brennan Armstrong to go from a free-flowing offense that Robert and I and Jason Beck present to throwing the ball away more, emphasizing the running game, and they're actually asking Brennan Armstrong to do less, which is tough for a quarterback who, that wants to make plays, is aggressive. He can run the football, a lefty come into the dome as well. We've seen it here with Garrett Schrader. The benefit that Garrett Schrader has gotten from Anai and Beck speaks for itself. He had a rough game for the most part until obviously stepping up in the fourth quarter against Purdue, but it's just been a different guy, and that's coaching. That's Anai and Beck kind of streamlining what he can do. But the most impressive thing that I have seen from Garrett Schrader this year, he's just playing the game. He just feels confident. He knows where he's going. They've put him in a position to just play football. That's the position they put Brennan Armstrong in last year, and that has not been the case for Brennan this year. I mean, Virginia barely got by Old Dominion last week. They lost to Illinois 21-3. The Tommy DeVito led Illinois Fighting Illini, and they beat Richmond pretty big in week 1. But I feel like this is a game not only with Anai and Beck's knowledge of Virginia. I just think Syracuse matches up well against Virginia in a lot of ways. That offensive line of Virginia struggling. Mikel Jones and company, I think, are going to feast on that. Virginia's got some good receivers, and I know that Garrett Williams got challenged a bit last week by Charlie Jones from Purdue. Also made a bunch of plays, and Garrett Williams, by the way, leads this team in solo tackles. So, I mean, this guy is, still pretty darn good out there. I feel like Syracuse wins that matchup. Virginia can't run the ball. They want to. It's kind of by committee, so that run defense just can't get gashed. I mean, look, Aiden O'Connell threw for 424 yards last week. You can get to the Syracuse defense in one of those weird games that we saw a week ago, but I think you kind of learn from your mistakes there. I just like pretty much every matchup in this game going Syracuse's way. I mean, we'll see when this all plays out on Friday night, of course. But our predictions were in today. I've got Syracuse winning 38-24. Myself, Emily Leiker, Nate Mink all pick Syracuse to win. So what are you guys picking in this matchup? What do you see in there? A couple of questions I wanted to highlight first, though. Ben says, do you think if Syracuse beats UVA and goes 5-0, they can take on NC State and be 6-0? I feel like they can beat NC State, Ben, especially because you got to buy to get ready for them. NC State, now maybe by then they'll be rolling a little bit more, but there's just been something missing from NC State this year. I feel like Devin Leary hasn't been at his best. I mean, they have not lost, so you got to give them credit for that. But there's like a gear missing from NC State. That game's at the Dome as well, so I think they absolutely can win that game. I'll say this, that will be their toughest game. Purdue turned out to be a tougher game than we thought. We discussed it here on the show, and I discussed it on my radio show and wrote about it on syracuse.com, that I felt like Purdue would be a game where adversity would kick in and some things had just gone a little too smoothly in week 1 and week 2, and that's just not how it goes in football. Purdue was a tough matchup in that realm. I think NC State's just going to be a tough matchup generally. But can they win that game? Absolutely they can win that game. Jerry says if Syracuse beats Virginia, they go 4-0 and not 5. Then they play Wagner and then a bye week, then NC State. Yeah, that's what I was saying, Jerry. So you get to 4-0. You get to 5-0 because you're going to beat Wagner, then the bye, then NC State. Ben with another thought here. I know it's college football and anything can happen, but I put a W over Wagner. Don't get me wrong. Wagner can have an upset in them, but I feel Syracuse is better players. Guys, look, I'm telling you, I would be fall off my chair stunned if Wagner beat Syracuse. Look, never doubt sports, and you never say never. Nothing's 100%, but it's 99.99. Wagner does not match up with Syracuse. I mentioned it earlier. They lost 66-7 to Rutgers. Like, if Syracuse just shows up and remembers game time, 5:00 kick for that one, by the way, on ESPN Plus, ACC Network Extra, so not traditional television, but certainly most people have smart TVs these days, and you can run the app through and watch it that way. Wagner is not going to beat Syracuse. Not happening. That's what makes that Virginia win at 4-0 so intriguing, because you're essentially 5-0 by winning that game. Now, you guys can circle back and tell me if I'm wrong. I'm not going to be wrong about that one. They're not losing to Wagner. It's just not happening. Virginia, they could lose that game. Of course they could. That's college football. But Wagner, that is not happening. So I appreciate the one game at a time approach. I appreciate respect your opponent and all that, but not that team. No way, no how. Mike says NC State plays Clemson week after next. We'll see a lot of those teams in the next couple of weeks. Good to see Allison in the chat here. Got to force some turnovers with this Virginia team, and I think they will. Now, speaking of turnovers, knock on wood, it's going to happen inevitably at some point. I thought it would last week, but Syracuse still has not committed a turnover themselves this year. They have created 6 takeaways. They had 7 all of last year. So that shows you they're on a better pace there. They're getting aggressive. None better than Caleb Okechukwu last week. What a play that was. JT Greer gets a little pressure on Aiden O'Connell. And, quarterbacks, sometimes that competitive edge can get the best of them. Sometimes you just have to take the sack. Sometimes you just have to throw the ball away. Aiden O'Connell saw somebody open in the flat with Greer all over him and tried to kind of get rid of the ball. He's all wrapped up. And, let me see if I can just chuck it over there. And there's Caleb Okechukwu, just like Merry Christmas. My man running into the end zone. Yes, it is the first day of fall. Speaking of seasons changing here. So I look forward to everybody's Christmas displays shortly. I think we just forget about Halloween and go right to Christmas these days. But happy first day of fall, everybody. It's raining outside my window here in Syracuse today, although it looks like it's clearing up, which is good because I'm going to walk the dog after this. He's very excited about that. So I hope everything's going well where you guys are, and a happy first day of fall to you. So good questions there. Good thoughts is what a crossroads this team is at, right? And the potential of what it could be. And people are excited about this team, as they should be. I think the crowd Friday night, so you had 37,000 and change for Louisville. You had 35 and change, about 36,000 for Purdue. I think the crowd's going to be similar in that one. Maybe it cracks 40K. You get a little bit of a bump. People excited about this. The student section will certainly be filled. Friday night's tough because I think a lot of people that would go to the game are either playing high school football, officiating high school football, parents going to watch their kids play high school football, students going to high school football games. So that high school football contingent kind of eats into the crowd a little bit. So I think I'd be surprised, frankly, if it cracked 40,000. But look, they don't, it's not a matter of how many people are there. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Get the right people in the building. And the first 2 games, it's been the right kind of crowd. Loud throughout, loud when they have to be. I mean, Purdue took the air out of the place a couple of times. That Louisville game, that crowd was unbelievable in that season opener. And yet another primetime game. Most games this year have been, so you had an 8:00 kickoff for Louisville. You had a 7:00 kickoff for UConn. Nooner last week, another primetime game this week. ACC Network Friday. Oh, no, that's ESPN. ESPN Friday night matchup. And that's going to be really interesting because everybody's watching that game, right? I mentioned Friday night football and high school football and stuff, but if you're just home watching sports on a Friday night, Aaron Judge, if he's going for home run 62, that's over on Apple Plus, and not everybody has that, right? The eyes of the sports world will essentially be on Syracuse football Friday night. So you want to have a good showing on national TV. You want the crowd to be into it, no matter how big the crowd is in that one. So Last week, they were in that noon window and one of the better games in the noon window. So it's not like Syracuse has lacked attention this year, but they'll certainly have the most national attention they've had all year in this matchup on a Friday night on ESPN. Mike says we need Tucker to get back on track Friday. We'll need the ground game second half of the season. Mike, you're absolutely right. Now, I will say this. I think Tucker's going to get back on track. Virginia has the 81st ranked rush defense in college football so far. I know some early numbers can, be skewed a little bit depending on who you play and everything, but Illinois gashed them on the ground. Even Old Dominion last week piled up some yards on this team. This Virginia defense is it's not anything to write home about. Tony Elliott's there to fix that. He was the defensive coordinator at Clemson. I think he'll do a good job eventually, but right now they're just trying to figure out just what they're doing. And Tucker, I think, will absolutely get back on track. And look, it's been an adjustment for him. You've got Chris Elmore out, right? Teams are keying in on him. Emily Likers is doing a great job on syracuse.com with the Tucker tracker, it's called. So you guys should keep up with that and read those stories. But there's no question that you need Tucker back on track, because the more Tucker is bottled up and teams focus on him, that gives opposing defenses more of an opportunity to hone in on Garrett Schrader, because the threat now is Schrader can throw or pass. Tucker can run or go out for a pass. That Arondé Gatson touchdown last week, the first one, not the game winner, but the first touchdown he got, half the Purdue defense was following Tucker because he was out on a pass route, and that let Gatson just kind of cut in, go to the other side of the field, and he's wide open. So Tucker on the field, even if he's not running the ball, Mike, is crucial because he is a decoy. But that's not going to continue. You need Sean Tucker to be pleased with his performance. We've run the gamut on Tucker tweets this year. He was pleased with his performance. He was okay with his performance. He was not okay with his performance this week. That makes me sad when Sean Tucker's not pleased with his performance. Such a bummer, right? Oh, come on. This week, though, he'll be right back on track. And Mike, you make a good point there. There's our guy, Rob, who says, the use of Arondé Gatson reminds me of how Scott Schaefer used Irv Phillips, the express back. He can line up in the slot, but also be used in the running game. Gatson lines up at receiver, but can line up closer to the line as well. We know how you feel about your use, or in this case, misuse of the tight end. Not long ago, we had Nick Provo, and he was solid, but this rendition of the tight end with a talent like Gatson is a clear and fun tactical advantage. Rob, you nail it as always, my friend, because I'm starting to get away from the thought that Syracuse is using the tight end when they throw the ball to Gatson, because you nailed it there. He's more of a hybrid. I don't look at him as a tight end. I don't look at him in that traditional tight end role. He's kind of a wide receiver tight end hybrid that, frankly, what Dino Baber said it this week. You'd have to be Stevie Wonder not to see that that's a guy who should be on the field and should be a weapon and should be incorporated into the offense. So as happy as it makes me that Robert and I recognizes the weapon the tight end can be and what you should do in that case, I don't even look at Gatson as a tight end anymore. I think what you said, the Irv Phillips kind of, what was the term, the express role, right? Whatever the case may be. And quite often, and this has been such a big thing in the Syracuse offense this year, pre-snap motion. And we're talking a few seconds before the snap. Quite often, Gatson, not that we want to give tips to Virginia now, but they're watching film. They see it. Gatson has been probably the biggest benefactor of that, because he'll cross paths. Him and Max Mang will switch sides. Devon Cooper will come in and kind of draw a defensive, will draw some defensive attention, and Gatson just gets open. Particularly on the left side of the field. He'll kind of cut over both of those touchdowns he had last week, the one in the end zone, which, by the way, folks, go watch that throw again. Garrett Schrader, who, like I said, he struggled for a lot of that Purdue game. The guy was named the quarterback of the week in the ACC and struggled for a lot of that game, which shows you how big that fourth quarter was. But that throw to Gatson, he's got a guy in his face, has to kind of throw off his back foot about 40 yards, and that ball could not have been more accurate. It could not have been in a place more that only Gatson could catch that. That's a gamer right there. I think that's the best quality of Garrett Schrader that I think people are really excited about. When he's in peril, he's at his best. There were several plays in that game he had to kind of tuck the ball and run because Purdue just shut off his passing lanes. And that was Schrader last year, right? Schrader last year was, pardon me while I take a quick sip of the agua. Go Bills. Schrader last year, that's what would happen. He would struggle for 3.5 quarters and then just make the throw. The Virginia Tech game comes to mind. He's been more consistent in that realm, but he still was off his game. Schrader admitted, Allison, you brought this up in the chat last week, and you got a question about the Mob podcast here. I'll comment on that in a second. There was some sickness going around the team. Schrader confirmed that. They didn't really confirm like who missed practice or what the case may be, but from what I heard, there's about 8 or 9 guys that missed some practice last week. I don't think it was COVID. I don't know if it was COVID. I don't want to speculate on anything there, but there was definitely some sickness going around the team last week that, look, Schrader, you could tell was just a little off his game. Some other players out there, you could tell were just a step slow, a little bit off. You know, that'll throw you off if you can't practice and you're sick and you're just trying to overcome that. Remember, a noon game, so it's not like you have all day to, have some of grandma's chicken soup and get ready for that. You just got to get up and go. And they still gutted that thing out, which shows you, how football players can get through that stuff. But it's incredible what Schrader does in that case. Just when you think he's done, they got to him, he's taken some hits in this game, he'll make a throw like that. It's incredible. So, Allison, I have not seen the Mob podcast beyond just some clips that have been out there. I do want to watch that. So if you guys aren't familiar with this, Caleb Okechukwu and friends, I believe Marlo Wax is on that too. Per the world we're in today, everybody's got a podcast, right? But I love that players do this and kind of take advantage of the world we're in and get their voice out there. I mean, it's one thing for me to talk to a player and do an interview, and that's great in the traditional means. But these guys, when they are just hanging with their buddies and hanging with themselves, they're loose, they're free. And I feel like you as a fan get some insight that, frankly, I can't deliver, right? So check that out. I haven't seen it yet. I am going to check it out. I'm glad that Allison brought it up. And I like that players have more of a voice these days, right? And can use social media and can use outlets to do this. I believe Caleb, I'd have to look this up to be sure. I believe he was a communications student and now he's into something else, wrapping up his degree, but one way or the other, that's a fun thing. And I'm glad that athletes get to do that, especially in this era of name, image, and likeness and getting to kind of get their name out there. And I don't think this is a case of name, image, and likeness. I think he actually does this. The SU account puts it out. So I think it's kind of done in coordination with SU athletics or done as a school thing, not like an individual thing he gets paid for. I'm not sure about that, but it's a little tricky what Syracuse can do in terms of official affiliation with name, image, and likeness. So I believe that's kind of a Syracuse thing he's doing, but either way, love to hear that independent voice out there and hear what the players have to say. Cause when they're around the media, there's an official media session on Tuesday where the players are made available. And, look, they're a little guarded. They're a little buttoned up. They know they're talking to a bunch of cameras and microphones. And, I think they're essentially told to be careful what they say. Don't give away anything, in terms of play calls or any of that stuff, X's and O's that coaches don't want to give away. When they're just hanging with their buddies, it's just a different conversation, right? So I haven't seen the whole thing, but I have seen some clips enough that, I'll probably do that after we get off here, Allison, after we walk the dog. Sit down and watch that a little bit. Good suggestion there. So remember, we got a 7:00 kick this week between the Orange and Virginia. So that means our post-game coverage on these same channels that you're watching here on Syracuse Orange Sports on YouTube, on our Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page will come your way. I want to say about 11 o'clock on Saturday night. So I hope you guys, and, I always say, I hope you're staying up late. For some of you, that's, if you're on the West Coast or, out west a little bit, that might actually be a good time for you to watch some Syracuse football. 7:00 kick out here in the East. That's a 4:00 kick out West. So up late for me, up late for us East Coasters, but no matter what time it is for you, come hang. We'll be here Saturday after the game doing what we're doing here, taking your questions and comments. And, Jerry gets in there. The O-line needs to open holes for Tucker, protect Schrader to keep him healthy the whole season. No question about that. And I think that offensive line, all told, has been doing a much better job this year. What a difference Mike Schmidt has made there, the offensive line coach that came in for Syracuse last year. We'll discuss all those things and more Saturday night after the Orange take on Virginia. Let's wrap it up here for another edition of Orange Weekly. Appreciate you coming by, hanging out. Great comments and questions today. Again, if you missed the show, we stream live Thursdays around noon, but the YouTube clip, we put up a post on syracuse.com. If you follow at SYR Football on Twitter, certainly if you're watching on Facebook, the video automatically archives there. So plenty of places that you can see the show if you do miss it. We thank you for hanging with us. We thank our friends at Krause Health as our presenting sponsor. And why don't you guys enjoy the rest of your week? And we'll be back here Saturday night. I said Saturday night. I'm wrong. Friday night. Tomorrow night. Friday night lights. Friday night. Friday night's a great night for football. You know what movie I'm talking about there? Bonus points if you know what movie I'm talking about there. Friday night. Let's get that right. So I'll be here Saturday talking to myself because there won't be anybody here after the game. Friday night lights at the JMA Wireless Dome. About 11 o'clock or so, we will talk to you after that one. But thanks for hanging with us here on Orange Weekly, presented by Krause Health. Have a good one, everybody.